Welcome everyone back to another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video. My name is DFree. I am currently joined by DeVille. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I pronounced it right? I always say it that way.
DeVille.
I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. I don't know why. But regardless, we today, guys, have something really cool to talk about. So recently, Kale and Caulifla did go ahead and come out in the game. Now, there is a ton of controversy around the card, not only because of the fact that it's Kale and Caulifla, and I see a lot of comments like, wait, why did they get such a powerful LR, right? But not only because of that, but because you're hearing terminology thrown out that you hear quite a lot, so you probably don't take it, too seriously. Stuff like, oh, this is the best card in the game, this card is broken, things like that. I said it in my summer video, but I know that I am one of the people that says that type of stuff a lot, because when it comes down to cards, it's like, well, why is this card so good? So when it comes to this card, DeVille here today is going to help me go ahead and talk about some of the things that make this card probably, if not certainly, the most broken, quote-unquote, release in the game to date. So when it comes down to this card specifically, this card is able to do a multitude of things. They are able to launch multiple supers. They get bonus attack as well. And we found out last night through testing that these mechanics that they have actually stack. It was already crazy not knowing that they stacked how good the card was, but since they stack, they're a lot better. So you want to jump in here and kind of talk about the attack stacking mechanic and how that works with the categories and stuff?
Yeah. So it's really weird and how they've decided to do this, and it's a very simple changing in how they would normally word this kind of stuff that makes it to where it stacks. So before it would say if you had like a Universe 6, a Pure Sands, and a Joined Forces category ally, you get 10% attack, and it would go up to like 70% at max, depending on whether or not you actually had 7 characters of those categories. Mm-hmm. But they made a small change where they, instead of saying or, they said and in their code, they're treating it as for each category of that, or each character that has that category on your team, and for each of those categories that character has 10%. So for yeah, it's a really weird way. It's hard to wrap your head around just saying aloud, but basically the LR counts for 3. It's one unit that has 3 of those categories, so it gives 30% to itself. The SS2 farmable Int Kale that you generally would want to run on Universe 6 counts as 2. It has she has Pure Sands and she has Universe 6. That counts as 20% for the card. And Hit counts for 10% because he only has Universe 6. And that's basically how it breaks down. So
and with that exact process, like you were saying, just to clarify, typically with cards, like every other card I would say ever, I think that's a safe assessment, right? That every other card prior to this card would not get stacking like that. You would just get the stagnant 10 because it would be or, right? It's Joined Forces or Pure Saiyans or Universe 6. But they effectively have an and there. So it's like since the LR is in all 3 of those, you get all 3 of those individual buffs.
Yeah, and so her max possible, even though it's not actually possible currently in the game, I've looked through the units and I'm pretty sure there is not enough units
that have all 3 of those.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure her LR is the only actual unit that has all 3.
Yeah, because, well, there's 3 units. Herself, the LR, the SSR, and the TUR, all of the same card. Because they all have the different names as well, so they can all be on the same team.
Yep, exactly. But, so the maximum that you could potentially get if they released even more Universe 6 Saiyan dual cards like a Kaba and Caulifla, or a Kaba, Caulifla, and Kale, so on and so forth in the future, you could get up to or even a Kale and Caulifla that turn into LR Kefla, and somehow they give them a different name or whatever.
Yeah.
But eventually, you could get up to 210% on top of their normal 66%.
That's insane.
It's ridiculous.
And that's just the attack gain part. We haven't even talked about the fact that they do other things, right? So now that we've talked about the attack gain, let's go ahead and transition over to the key gain, how that works with the key multiplier, and then also the fact that the dodge chance and then defense stacking as well are things that are factored in as well.
So Yeah, for her ki gain, normally it's +1 ki as she attacks. So the more attacks she does, the more ki she gets. It caps out at 6 ki. And you would just look at that and you'd think, oh, it's like Wrathful Broly. Once I'm getting 24 ki, that won't matter. But in this case, that's not true. So the way this actually works is they consider her to have a maximum ki multiplier of 30 ki, whereas most LRs cap at their 24 ki. So the ki multiplier, to explain, is basically as you gain ki, your attack goes up based on how much you got over the minimum requirement for 100%. The minimum requirement for 100% on almost every unit in the game starts at the little green bar you see when the ki color changes. So most units have they need 3 ki before they get to 100% their base attack stat. And then as they get more ki, it goes up to whatever their 12 ki multiplier is. For most Dokkan Fests, that's 150%. For most LRs, that's either 140 or 150% for the newer LRs, which is also 150% for Kale and Caulifla. Now, since we're talking about an LR, I'm just going to stop talking about the 12 and just go to the 24. So the 24, the way it breaks down is it takes, at max 24 ki, you have a 200% for any LR. It's just the same for every LR in the game. If you get to 24 ki, they have a 200% 200% ki multiplier. And the way that breaks down is depending on what their 12 ki multiplier is, the last 12 spots are evenly split in between the remaining value needed to reach 200%. Since Kale and Caulifla are 150% at 12 ki, they only need 50% more, which means that each ki above 12 they get gives them a roughly 8.3 repeating percent boost, or something along those lines, basically. It's 50 divided by 12.
That's nutty.
Yeah. And so that's what gets them to 200%. And because they are able to actually go beyond the 24 ki limit, they can actually keep getting that additional ki boost, that additional percentage boost as they go up in ki, as their passive goes up. So giving them, instead of a 200% like most LRs, they actually get to go to a 225% maximum ki multiplier.
And I feel like it's important to really stress that the stuff this card does, no other card in the game basically does this. They don't get to go past their maximum ki multiplier. They don't get to get the stacking attack gain buffs and just all that stuff.
Yeah, they don't. Not at all.
Yeah.
So,
I threw you off. My bad.
No, it's okay. Something else threw me off, actually. I looked at my phone and it said there was an alarm coming up. I'm like, no, let's not.
All good. But even that, they also, all of that factors into the fact that they, again, just gonna point it out again, can get a maximum attack gain of however much you were saying. Now, you're not always going to get that type of stuff. Even right now, as you said, that attack number that you pointed out wasn't actually possible. But the fact that it's a thing that could potentially happen is insane. That means this card will be crazy good later on in the future.
Yeah, exactly. The more cards they get that fit in all of these categories or multiple of these categories, if we ever get another leader that fits in all of these categories, then the more ridiculous this unit gets. Right now, the only reason that I would say Universe 6 is even partially balanced, and even the slightest fathom of the word, is because A, it's one of those hard to pull LR cards, and you would need 3 copies of her, at least, to get the most out of the unit. And then C, you still have to have the leader be hit, and he only gives her 10%. So that's you're forced to 2 units that only give 10% to her.
Yep.
Just immediately. You can't go, if you want to get the most out of the leader skill and off your other units, you can't go lower than that.
For
real.
So
it's the way to optimize her and make her ridiculously busted requires a lot more effort than most other units in the game. But once the easier they make that and the longer the game progresses, the more likely it gets that she's going to get a category that fits all her categories and then gives her the same 170 leader skill so that she can get her full passive and show off. And I want you to know, I want to point out that her full passive is higher than Goku and Frieza's full passive.
That's
Her full attack passive, if all 7 units were to have all 3 categories, is 276%. Goku and Frieza max out at 231%.
that's way higher, in fact.
Yeah, it's a lot higher.
And like the thing about them is it comes from different angles. We've actually spent a little bit of time talking about the fact that the key multiplier goes over. But I also want to point out now, because we haven't really talked about it, that we've pointed out attack stats and stuff like that. We've pointed out percentage gain and stuff like that. But we haven't really talked about the super attacks. The super attacks is where things get pretty actually out of hand for this card. And just on a side note, we're going to, as we could tell, this video is obviously mainly focused on offense. But I just want to point out that with the litany of attacks they do, the dodge chance goes up really quickly. And then on top of that, with each super, they get an indefinite raise to defense. Not to mention, they start off with 66% defense, coupled with those LR summonable stats as well. So they are going to be tanking really well, too. They're one of the better tanking units, and they can stack potentially really, really quickly because of the litany of attacks they do unleash. So you were saying that they can do a minimum of 2, but a maximum of 5 attacks as well, 4 being supers. Because apparently the same thing we talk about with the stacking actually applies to that passive part that says guaranteed super if you're up against Universe Survival Saga or Pure Saiyans, I believe. It's actually and or.
The translation, I feel, is a little off because when I looked into it myself, just because the way it's worded now, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that they get both. I think that also is supposed to have the and wording, because it would end up being the exact same as the way their attack gain per category works. Because if you're fighting like Ultra Instinct Goku UI, if you're fighting Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta, you get to do 2 guaranteed additional super attacks.
Not to mention the normal attack you're going to do, your initial attack, and then potentially the one from the potential system, which you are probably going to get because of the fact that each additional attack you do does increase the likelihood you're going to get the potential attack as well from the potential system.
So, yeah, basically the game recalculates whether or not you're going to get an additional attack every single time you attack. So, like, since she's guaranteed to do 4 attacks, that's 4 chances to get that additional attack proc. And if it's a 40% chance, like a level 20 additional, to get the additional attack.
Yeah, you're almost guaranteed to get it.
Yeah, even like the 15%, or I guess it would be 14% on a AGL unit, and you give her like 12 crit. That's and like each attack also has that same 24% or 30% chance, however you want to split your unit, chance to crit. On top of that, it's just her damage gets ridiculous.
Yeah, so you have a unit that could potentially crit on 4 supers and a normal attack in 1 turn.
Yeah, you could, if she did that, her damage would go above, like, for that turn, at like 100%, her damage would go probably above 30,000, or 30 million, sorry.
That's crazy.
Like, above 30 million, like, total damage for the turn if she crit on everything.
Yeah, that's absurd. That, and see, like, the thing is, I really want to also drive home that there are other LR cards in the game too that are really, really good or considered to be broken. So when it comes to this card, though, we've talked about how with each super attack or just each attack in general, their key goes up, their defense goes up. With each super, their defense goes up as well. We've talked about how they're able to utilize the highest key multiplier in the game, which in turn means that they're able to get to levels unparalleled by every other card in the game as well. But with each of these attacks that kicks in, this is the last thing I want to kind of cover. With each of these attacks, whether it's super attack or the normal attack, they're still able to utilize that key multiplier gain, because you'll see typically with LR cards when they do an additional super, whether it's from the potential system or whatever, they default back to having exactly the 12 key multiplier. This one here actually sustains the key that they gain through the passive to where they're getting key multipliers of 14 all the way up to 18 key, 12 key supers. It doesn't make any sense, but they can do it.
Yeah. So yeah, they do the way the game works is it when you do an additional attack, it always does the attack at your lowest key value. But because of how LR Caulifla and Kale work, as soon as they attack, it calculates that they're getting an extra key, and then it applies that right then when they attack. And if they were like, it doesn't change what super they're doing, because if you got 15 key on their first super, or not 15, 17 key on their first super, even though they're gaining an extra key when they attack, they've already started attacking. They're going to do their 12 key at 18 key. And the same situation is here. If you have +6 key, you're not going to go ahead and do the 18 key because they start out doing their 12 key, but you get to 18 key.
And that's important because you're not just sitting at 18 key with no attack gain. You actually are hitting harder than you would have been had you had 12. And I want to make sure that, because I know a lot of people aren't going to understand the logistics of this, that's something that we need to understand, is they're not doing normal things. I was telling DeVille here that I wouldn't be surprised if they put out a data download to fix this stuff, because this doesn't make any sense. It's really baffling.
They have literally in 3 different ways broken the game with this unit. Like, I shouldn't say broken because the game still obviously functions, but they have changed the game, the way they make units, the way units can work, what we thought about how units can work in 3 different ways. The and thing alone changed 2 separate things on one card, to where we would say, cards used to say it can get 2 additional supers, it could get 3 additional supers. They didn't number that here. They kept it as, it just says launches additional super, but because it says the and on that, it'll do it twice. And then the same goes for the other passive. Usually they would split that and say gets 10% for this category, gets additional 10% for this category, gets additional 10% for this category, all separated into 3 little blocks. Instead, they just wrote it as one block and added an and. And now that we have to look out for that for in every future unit from now on, because it could change. They could do the same thing again, where they give it all of these boosts that all apply depending on, as long as they're all there, rather than saying it applies as long as one of them are there. And we're gonna have to watch the units, read them better, be more careful about how we translate, because these units do things that you would never have considered them doing with the way that we had been looking at old units, with the way units had been before.
Definitely. So the last little... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the final break is obviously on the key multiplier thing.
Yeah, the key multiplier thing is absurd. I think we can all agree on that one.
That one might actually be the most broken. Like, I'll say that one broke the game.
Yeah, that one's actually... You pointed this out, but like characters that get a surplus of key really quick here, like the physical Broly that just came out, the movie Broly from Dragon Ball Super, he gets 8 key when transformed, I believe. So like if they were to retroactively change him, he would be substantially stronger, because he'd be able to utilize, what, an 18 key super? Basically?
It'd be up to 20.
20 key super, see?
Because he could get him to 12 key on his own, and then he +8s.
Yeah.
So if they were to change him retroactively, or change key support units, old units in the game, to where they could go beyond their base 12 key multiplier.
Yeah.
Like, this could get so stupid with how broken the game gets. Because the thing is, most TUR units scale their 12 key multipliers just a tad bit faster than LR units do. Like, they get to 100% at 3 key, and then they only need 9 more to get to like 150. Whereas an LR needs 12 more to get to 150. So getting an extra key on a TUR would give a much higher boost in the end to their multiplier than on an LR getting an extra key.
That's ridiculous. I still can't wrap my head around this unit at all.
This is legitimately the most ridiculous unit I've seen come out in Dokkan.
Yeah.
I mean, they broke the precedent of Vegito doing 4 attacks. No other unit since Vegito Blue came out could do 4 attacks in the game.
Yeah, and they come out, they can do 5.
4. They could get to 4, but they could never do more. Nobody broke that threshold. That was like the bar. And now there's a new bar.
Exactly. Now, the last thing I want to kind of just go over really quick was the calculations. So, like, you had some just preliminary calculations for 2 of the other considered to be best cards in the game, LRSS4, and then also the Goku and Frieza card. You kind of talked about them a little bit earlier, but do you want to kind of throw those numbers around just to kind of show people a little bit of where the offense is comparatively? Because I know that there are going to be people like, nah, they're not as good because the active skill or because Goku and Frieza is getting that additional attack whenever the enemy's an attack down, whatever the case is.
Mhm. So, yeah, we'll just quickly throw a couple of numbers for Goku out, and then I'll throw out a couple for Goku Frieza, and then I'll throw out some for LR Kale and Caulifla, because I have numbers for all of them. So for SS4 Goku, who I'm going to say is still probably my favorite LR out of the three of these, but obviously I'm definitely going to say he's not the best of the three. So the 24 key is at 55%, no support on the rotation. It's like 3 million roughly. 3,148,510 was the exact number, but it's basically 3.1 million.
Yeah, you can throw out the rough numbers.
Yeah, the ultimate attack does roughly 3.3 million. So that's roughly 6.7, 55% no support. And then 100%, same situation. He does 3.8 and then 3.8 with the 24 and then 3.9 with the ultimate. That roughs out to like 7.7 basically million. And that's not crits or anything. So if you were to crit, just double the damage. Essentially, it's a 1.9 times multiplier for crits, but essentially just double the damage is what they do. So you could do anywhere from like 10 million to 14 million with crits in that turn. And that's only for one turn. Remember, like you get that ultimate attack once and then it's gone. You don't get to use it again. So for one turn, he can do like up to 14 million damage. But after that, he's down to 6 to 7 million tops. And that's obviously not counting barriers that can reduce your damage and so on and so forth. This is like raw damage that they would do if the unit had no defense and no barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the next unit, LR Goku and Frieza, if I can find them on my calculation sheet, there they are. All right, so they would do like, with their 24 key, which is on the proper setup, you're basically gonna get that every time. The 24 key would do like 5 million at 55% with the Tech TN support, because the proper setup is generally Android 17, the Ranger one, and then the Tech TN, and that unit between it. So that's like 5 million, 5.3. Crit does 10.6 or 10 million roughly, and then at 100% it goes to like 6.2 million. Hits up to 14, not 14, but 13 roughly tops. I believe the maximum number I ever managed to calc out for them was 15 million. So they could continuously do that every time they get that setup. Because that's the thing with them, is they don't always have this perfect possible setup that gets them their 24 key and their support and all their attack links and the attack down status. You can only get that once every 6 turns, basically.
Wow.
So that's again.
And then not to mention, attack down isn't always eligible.
Yeah. So some events, they can't even ever hit this optimal setup, no matter what they do. So like that's another factor you have to keep in mind. Like, yes, they can reach 15 million. Yes, Goku can reach 14 million. But these are like one-time things in most events. Like, you're not going to get this optimal setup like 3 times in an event, or 5 times, or 6 times, etc. But then you come down to LR Kale and Caulifla, and their base numbers, like just their super attack, right? Their 24 key super attack, no support, are already wild. The Goku's was 3.8 million at 100% with no support. They, with 55% no support, can get 3.8 million depending on your team. Same number. And they don't even need to be rainbowed. Same number. And then if you're fighting UI Goku or SS Blue Evolution Vegeta, like you get to 6.7. Not 6. Sorry, 9. 6.7 is if you're fighting one or the other. So if you're fighting either a Universe Survival Saga or a Pure Saiyans, you can get to 6.7. And if you're fighting UI Goku, SS Blue Evolution Vegeta, who have both, you go up to like 9 million damage. And that's no crit, that's no additionals from the dupe system. Neither of those are considered in that number. An additional from the dupe system would put you over 11 million. And that's still 55%, so she can't even crit at this point. You get to 100%, and her base super, and I'm not counting support still, no support. Her base super can do 4.8 million, and her max damage without crits and without like against both, without crits, without additionals from the dupe system, 11 million.
It's already a million over Goku.
Yeah, this unit doesn't even need to crit, doesn't even need to get the dupe system additional. Just up against one of these events can outdamage any of these units. They like if you're just fighting a Pure Saiyan or Universe Survival Saga, which is the vast majority of the events in this game, you're getting 8 million at 100%, 8.5. This unit goes, it's ridiculous.
And then you factor in the defense gain, and then you factor in the key gain. The dodge.
The fact that you're literally never not going to get her max key super ever in any feasible situation. Like, the only way you do it is if your team, like, obviously if you don't have the optimal box, it might be more difficult. But once she's done her 6 attacks, you're always at least getting 24 key. Because these teams link too well. She has Tournament of Power, which is 3 key. She has Universe 6, which is 2 key. She has Prepared for Battle, the most common
Diva.
And she has Battlefield Diva. So you can link her with literally any Kale or Caulifla card in the game, basically. And that's 10 key.
That's nutty.
9 key. But still, like...
And then if you have Kale, who offers key support.
2 key. And I'm pretty sure she has all of those links, too.
Yeah, she does. She has Super Saiyan as well.
Yeah, and then Super Saiyan. So it's like... That's basically your entire requirement in a free-to-play card. The only link you're really missing is Legendary Power Fierce Battle. And Legendary Power is kind of the most negligible, one of the most negligible links in the game. Next to, like, Kamehameha. Those links need to change. But that's for them.
Yeah, so, and all those scenarios were without support. So, yeah. They're busted, guys. And I think they're so broken. It took 30 minutes to explain why they're so broken. Take that into consideration.
Closing argument. If you think they're not the best card in the game, you're wrong.
And like the thing about that is, I don't think that's even wrong to say that. Like there's no debate. I don't really see a debate. You can go from offense to defense to self-sufficiency to literally doing things no other card in the game can do.
And on top of that, their key links are so good on their teams that they're on that they even support the rest of the team in terms of letting people get their supers. They're not even like a selfish unit that needs other units to give them the key. They can give it out themselves, and then they're sufficient enough with themselves that they don't care.
Yeah.
You don't have to save up orbs for them. You don't have to get a special setup. You just put the unit on your team, on Universe 6, on Pure Saiyans, on Joined Forces, and they're probably going to be fine.
That's absurd.
Oh, and Peppy Gals, too.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
Can't forget Peppy Gals.
Yeah,
and then Joined Forces in the future is going to be a busted category, but we'll save that for another day.
Oh, yeah.
It's already pretty busted.
No, it's getting... I mean, it's got Yamcha and Poor. How can it not?
Oh, for real. Guys, hopefully this information or this video was informative for you. Again, it really ultimately doesn't matter because all these cards can solo anything, but just for comparison's sake, this card is setting an interesting precedent for multiple things. And by extension, also the SSR cards that they came out with, the Kale and Caulifla base form cards that are separate cards as well. They're doing some of the similar stuff, guaranteeing additionals, or excuse me, guaranteeing dodges, guaranteeing super attack versus specific enemies. These are all new-ish mechanics at least. And the game could go a few different ways from here. So we'll see what ultimately happens. But thank you so much, man, for joining me. I definitely couldn't have been able to explain this without you. I suck at the math and all of that stuff. So I really appreciate you for helping me out with this, man.
No problem.
For sure.
Anytime.
Guys, if you want to get a little bit more DeVille, go ahead and follow him on Twitter. I'll leave it down below. Have an awesome day, everyone, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, see you guys. Thanks for coming.